Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll move it.
Vote?
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Overnolte. Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
It's 4-1.
Thank you. Ms. Nichols, issue number 2, the natural gas leakage abatement.
Yes. This BCP relates to the implementation of Senate Bill 1371. This legislation was designed with two purposes, both to ensure pipeline safety and to reduce methane emissions from pipelines. Due to this dual role, the California Public Utilities Commission and ARB are acting as partners in this rulemaking. The Public Utilities Commission provides its knowledge of pipeline safety and localized leak detection services, while ARB provides its knowledge in the greenhouse gas emissions and reduction opportunities. Methane is a critical and potent short-lived climate pollutant, as well as, of course, a serious safety concern. Ensuring the emissions reduction strategies from SB 371 are developed in appropriate and cost-effective ways is necessary if California is going to achieve its short and long-term climate goals. To ensure that the climate objectives of the bill are met, ARB needs to collect additional emissions data at a scale that is beyond what the PUC is capable of doing on its own. And the crux of any type of emissions reduction strategy that we would develop will be based on an overview of where the emissions are coming from and an ability to design a targeted strategy for reducing them. Here in California, we have limited data, and the national data that exists is largely from the 1990s. As a result of the CPUC rulemaking, the utilities will be submitting data that will provide new information on what they know about the number and types of leaks, as well as a variety of practices, but it will not specifically be looking at the emissions of these leaking facilities and surrounding related facilities from the gas distribution and transmission system into the atmosphere. So basically, the problem that we have is that the utilities collect their data in a way that isn't adequate for determining the total system-wide emissions and only provides a starting point for developing the kind of strategies that we believe the legislature intended to result from this legislation. We need independent testing, more in-depth technical analysis, and cross-checking of the data, as well as to conduct engineering assessments of mitigation technologies that would be based on different pipe materials, age, pressure, etc. So basically, this is a situation where ARB has a role to play here that we do not have adequate staffing, and we're seeking 2 additional positions in order to carry out this role. It's not something that could be absorbed with existing personnel. We need people with particular kinds of expertise to perform these kinds of analyses, and it will be an ongoing program, not just a one-time activity. So, for that reason, I ask for your support.
Thank you. I know LAO and Department of Finance have comments. Is that right?
Yes, thank you. We did recommend rejection of these 2 positions for a couple of reasons. First, the bill, SB 1371, did not actually require ARB to collect the data that would be funded here. The second is we think the funding would be premature at this stage because the proceeding process still has to go forward, and we need to see what data the entities would be required to collect before it's clear what additional gaps there might be that ARB might need to fill, and potentially could come back in the future to request funds to collect that additional data. if necessary. And the third issue is with respect to the position that would act as sort of a liaison between ARB and PUC as it goes through its proceedings. We think that's some one-time workload that could probably be absorbed. ARB regularly works with other agencies on a variety of GHG-related workload.
Sue Montoya, Department of Finance. We acknowledge that the bill does not explicitly name the Air Resources Board to conduct these activities, but we believe that the intent was for this. We note also that the Air Resources Board has been working with the Public Utilities Commission, and the Public Utilities Commission acknowledges and supports the ARB proposal as a component of SB 1371 implementation.
Thank you. The recommendation on this item is to hold open, and I concur with that. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, if there's no questions, we'll hold this item open and address it again in the future. Thank you very much, Ms. Nichols. Thank you. We'll proceed now with the Natural Resources Agency. Mr. Kampf, we'll begin with the Environmental License Plate Fund shortfall issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick Kemp, I'm the Assistant Secretary from the Natural Resources Agency, and the staff analysis does a very good job describing what the situation was. Just in a nutshell, the agency was informed from Finance in the fall that we are having a shortfall of funding in the ELPF Environmental License Plate Program. We developed the plan that is presented here. Our main ideas behind the plan were, first of all, since ELPF mostly funds staffing, it would be almost impossible to do layoffs to reduce the expenditure of the fund during the current year, and you would only get partial bang in the budget year. So we had to find other ways to reduce the expenditures down. So luckily we had some one-time items we could shift from year to year, and we did also make some minor reductions through the different departments, and those all seem to be coming in pretty good at this time. So we think we're okay in the current year. The budget year, we had a little, maybe a touch more flexibility, but still the same issues are there with it being almost all staffing. So we continued the one-time reductions in fund shift, and then we did major fund shifts from Parks and Recreation and from Fish and Wildlife. They could shift between their funds for expenditures in the ELPF to their fund sources. And the idea was we would try to do this with no major cuts for 2 years and come back in the budget next year with a plan to hopefully solve the problem. Another piece of it was also a 5% increase in the environmental license plate fee for people who buy those plates. That's essentially the solution we came up with.
All right.
With limited options, excuse me.
Thank you. LAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Ashley Ames with the LAO. First, we found that important information was not included with the governor's budget with this proposal, such as identification of and funding levels for the ELPF-supported programs and projects. And while the administration did provide some of this additional information upon request, we thought that providing the information in the annual budget proposal and in the annual budget itself, as was done in the past, would be more timely and more helpful for your legislative decision-making. And so we've recommended the legislature require the administration to provide detailed spending information by ELPF program, both now and then to include this detailed information in the budget in the future. And then secondly, to address the shortfall, for the current year, we found that the governor's proposal, mainly by delaying one-time spending, was reasonable, especially given the limited options. And for the budget year, we found that the administration's proposal did offer one reasonable option to address the shortfall in 15-16. As already discussed, we note that it does have trade-offs. The costs are mostly borne by the Department of Parks and Recreation and Department of Fish and Wildlife. And we just note there are other alternatives available to you, such as reducing funding from other programs that are supported by the ELPF, reducing or eliminating some of the one-time spending, or increasing the license plate fee beyond the level that is currently proposed. So determining which option is most consistent with your priorities just requires a policy decision on your part about where you want the spending reductions or fee increases to be born. And then finally, to address the long-term deficit, we've recommended reevaluating some of the ongoing spending priorities for the ELPF that are listed in statute. There's several options to ensure that ELPF monies reflect legislative priorities. For example, uses of the funds could be placed in a preference-based order in statute, or you could create some type of funding bucket that specifies funding levels for different programs. And you could also narrow the statutory uses of ELPF to more specific goals or programs, or eliminate from statute any uses that are no longer deemed to be high priority to the legislature. And those were our recommendations, but happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I mean, it sounds like everybody acknowledges that there's a problem here, and I think what's proposed is a short-term solution while these options are considered. Mr. Camp, did you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Questions? Any members of the public who would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Mark Fenstermaker on behalf of the Nature Conservancy. We submitted a letter along with some of our environmental NGO colleagues, understanding and acknowledging the tough situation we are in. We were disappointed to see that the funding for the fourth climate change assessment was delayed. The original proposal was put all $5 million forward last year. In the final negotiations, we came up with a solution to have half of it funded last year, half of it funded this year. We would expect it this year to have the final funding coming online so that this important work could be completed. We would ask that the full $5 million be included for the fourth climate change assessment in this year's budget. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a quick note on that,
Yes.
based on the timing of how the contracts and stuff will be let for that, it's only delaying the assessment just a few months the way we did this, so we don't see a major impact for that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Camp, it's stated in our staff report that the administration is working on a fix and hopes to have that in time for next year's budget. Can you, or the administration, Department of Finance, provide us with some assurances that we're going to have that proposal in a timely fashion and that there'll be an opportunity for the various agencies and members of the public to weigh in on the proposed solution?
Well, right now the plan is for a solution in Jan 10.
Great. Any other questions? Is there a motion on this item? Question or
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment.
or comment?
Normally, I scrutinize fee increases very closely. However, in this case, I really think it's justified. This is an optional program to fund these environmental programs, and I think that anyone paying the fee would be supportive of being able to fund those programs fully without putting pressure on the general fund. So I'd like to move the item.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Bloom.
Aye?
Gordon. Obernolte. Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
That item's out, 4-0.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the Marine Protected Area monitoring issue.
Good morning, Chair Bloom and committee members. Cindy Dawson with the Natural Resource Agency. We are requesting $2.5 million to support the needed monitoring to inform the adaptive management of the statewide network of marine protected areas. To date, the state has made a significant investment in the science-based, stakeholder-driven process to design and implement the MPA network. We are currently in a transition moving from the implementation phase to the adaptive management phase, and the requested funds will be used to meet high-priority immediate monitoring needs that will be critical in developing the statewide adaptive management program for the MPA network moving forward. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Department of Finance, LAO.
Thank you, Leah Moore with the Department of Finance. This proposal is an appropriate use of Proposition 84 funds, and the monitoring work is likely to result in future projects. The one-time nature of this request is by design. It allows time for thoughtful development of a longer-term funding solution. We recognize that this is an ongoing issue. This is a proposal for this year only. The administration does not currently support the use of general fund, as I know it's been discussed, including in the hearing handout for this activity at this time, but we would put that on the table for future funding.
What about the suggestion that DOF come back with a proposal for long-term funding in the May revise?
I believe that that may not be enough time to kind of fully look at all funding options. It's a very short time period, so giving it until the next fall for the Jan 10 proposal would give more time for thoughtful consideration.
LAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ashley Ames with the LAO. We acknowledge that this specific proposal is for one time, but we do find that monitoring activity as proposed is an ongoing activity, and therefore we have found that the Proposition 84 bond funds would not be an appropriate funding source. We do find that the proposed monitoring activity and funding levels are reasonable, but we just note that, like I said, we think that they're ongoing, shouldn't be paid for with bond funds, and we also note that the bonds are typically repaid with general fund. This repayment does include interest, and therefore that results at a higher cost to the general fund over the long term than if it were just funded with general fund initially. And so therefore we've recommended the legislature reject the governor's proposal to use the bond funding, and if this activity is a high priority for the legislature to choose a more appropriate funding source.
We have some suggestions what that long-time funding source might be, and do you think we can get there before or at the time of the May revise?
Well, as we noted, if it's a high priority, we would look at the general fund potentially, just because the bond funds will eventually be paid for out of the general fund with interest. In our report, we also identified the ELPF, which, as we just discussed, does have other constraining factors. But once again, if it's a high enough priority, that would be one option. And I would also note that the Ocean Protection Council has put together at least one document that identifies some other potential funding sources, and so we could look to that as well.
Well, I hope everybody agrees that the Marine Protected Area is a program, is a highly successful program that's really helping in a big way to restore our ocean ecosystems, and this is a program that we need to continue and find a solution to the long-term funding issues that are identified here. Are there any questions or comments from the dais? Public comment?
Good morning, Chair Bloom and members of the subcommittee. My name is Jen Eckerly. I'm an ocean policy consultant with the Natural Resources Defense Council. And I just want to say that NRDC has been deeply involved in the design of the state's Marine Protected Area Network, and now we are working along with many partners on the implementation and management. I just want to encourage continued support for core monitoring of the Marine Protected Area Network. As Chair Bloom said, these MPAs are really working to help restore our marine ecosystems for the benefit of marine life and our coastal communities that depend on these places. I also wanted to reiterate that there is tremendous public support for these areas and a great foundation of partnership-based management and implementation happening as spearheaded by the Ocean Protection Council's partnership plan. And so there are state agencies working together, and also great range of local communities, including NGOs and tribal and government representatives, educators, and Aquaria, and all those folks working together to do outreach and education, compliance, enforcement, research, and monitoring. So encourage support for this ongoing funding wherever you find the appropriate funding source. Thank you.
So the recommendation here is to hold open and request that the agency come back during the May revise with a proposal. I think that's a good idea. Hear the skepticism about whether or not that can actually happen, but I don't see how the passage of time is going to make it any easier to come back with a proposal. So I would encourage you to think this through and see if there isn't some alternative that you can provide. Are there any other comments? We'll move on then. Thank you very much. The Energy Commission is up next, and I'm sorry, the Conservation Corps, did I miss one? I did. Conservation Corps, my apologies. No, I don't think you're wrong. I missed it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
David Meraki, Director of the CCC. If I might just provide a quick update on what the Corps has been up to and then answer any questions you might have. Today there's over 1,500 young women and men, including veterans, that are working on a wide range of conservation projects, and over the course of the year they'll complete about 2,000 of these projects focused on energy efficiency work in schools, fire prevention in the wildland-urban interface, restoration of streams, watersheds, wetlands, and other critical habitat, building trails throughout the state and federal park and forest systems, installing water-efficient irrigation systems, and responding to disasters. About 1 in every 5 CCC work hours is in response to disasters. With Proposition 39 funds, in just over a year's time, the CCC's trained about 300 Corps members to complete, and that's what we call our young workers, to complete energy surveys and retrofits in schools and other public buildings. We've completed industry-standard energy surveys of over 1,000 schools and 50 million square feet, which enables school districts to identify their top priority buildings and energy efficiency measures and apply for their share of funds from the Clean Energy Job Creation Fund. We've worked really closely with the UC Davis Energy Efficiency Center to develop technologies for data collection, data analysis that will continue to lower the cost and time of completing a survey. Due to the CCC's work, upfront costs have been lowered. We've eliminated the uncertain returns on investments that really stymie facilities managers, and it's led to a higher rate of adoption of energy efficiency measures by facilities managers. And at one point, the demand for CCC services from schools created a 73-month project backlog for our crews. With funding for a drought response, CCC has fielded 10 crews that have completed a wide range of projects, including turf replacement, leak detection and repair, installation of high-efficiency irrigation systems and controllers, installation of efficient indoor sanitary fixtures, installation of gray water recycling systems, and fire prevention through fuel reduction. We've worked with Caltrans, state parks, city and county government, nonprofits, and commercial entities such as the Holiday Inns. We also administer grants to nonprofit corps. The CCC is looking forward to implementing projects funded by Proposition 1, particularly those projects related to protecting rivers, lakes, streams, and coastal watersheds. And we're right now involved in a fairly daunting process of working with all the applicants that are proposing Proposition 1 funded projects to ensure the involvement of the young workers from the CCC and local corps in these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have comments from LAO or DOF?
So,
and I know you need to make a presentation on the storage facility.
On that, at Tahoe.
Right?
Yes, my colleague.
At Tahoe.
Yes.
Maybe why don't we do that first, and then we'll get the comments.
good morning. My name is Maria Bruman. I'm the admin chief for the CCC. So this project, we're asking for $2.5 to purchase and renovate an existing storage facility, and this is to complete a capital outlay project that was approved way back in 2006-07. The original project was to renovate an existing facility for the main Tahoe Center, and also to build a new warehouse and storage facility about a mile away on an existing CHP facility. However, when the plans were underway for the CEQA process, strong neighborhood opposition surfaced as far as the warehouse facility at the CHP location. With that in mind, DGS, Finance, and the CCC decided to split the project into two phases. The first one being finishing the main Tahoe Center, renovating that facility, and the second would be to finish the storage and warehouse project. Unfortunately, during the completion of the main phase one, funds ran out. Unanticipated items had to be funded, which is why we're here to request additional funding to complete the project. However, we've come up with a separate, a different proposal in terms of meeting the warehouse and storage needs. We're proposing to purchase an existing facility versus constructing a new facility at the CHP site because of the strong neighborhood opposition. So that's the summary of that project.
Elio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Virginia Early, Legislative Analyst Office. We've recommended rejecting this proposal for several reasons. When we asked the department what the specific problems with their current amount of storage space, they were not able to identify them. And we would note that currently the CCC operates and utilizes about 8,600 square feet, whereas the new facility would have 12,500. So this is quite a substantial increase in storage space that they would be receiving. So while there are some benefits, it's just unclear that the proposal is necessary and cost-effective, and there would be substantially greater long-term costs. For example, the current lease that CCC pays is about $43,000, but the annual debt service from revamping this new facility would be about $180,000 annually, and the maintenance costs are more expensive as well. And this is true even when we take inflation into account and the sale of a currently owned CCC facility. It's still significantly more costly. So happy to answer any more detailed questions you may have. With that, thank you.
My understanding is that LAO staff and budget staff are planning a site visit, assuming we hold this item open as is recommended, and so there'll be further workup on the issue. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
I think that's a good idea. Any questions or comments from the dais or public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll hold this item open. And thank you for your presentations. Now we'll get to the Energy Commission. And note that we have, and why don't we begin with Mr. Gordon? You had questions on issue 4 on the vote-only calendar that were appropriately addressed to the Energy Commission. Okay. Do you want to make a brief presentation on that BCP? And then Mr. Gordon can ask questions.
Let me clarify just to be sure I'm talking. This is Rob Oglesby. I'm Executive Director to the Energy Commission. Thanks for having me here today. I'll be happy to address it, but I want to make sure I'm addressing the correct one. Is it the climate change on fueling infrastructure?
Yes.
That's the one we'd like to chat about right now?
Yes, that's the one.
All right. So this is a second attempt at this budget change proposal. It was approved by this committee last year. And what this one is about is trying to assess the vulnerability of our oil infrastructure to basically climate change related events. And those include severe storms to the refineries. Many of the refineries are right there on the ocean front. It also includes impacts on pipelines that move petroleum refined products and other petroleum products. And those can be impacted by damages to levees as well as land subsidence. And so the notion with this particular proposal is to do something that we've already done with the electricity infrastructure and to kind of do an assessment of the weaknesses and vulnerabilities and make some recommendations with that particular infrastructure. I want to draw the committee's attention that the funding source for this proposal is from the Petroleum Violations Escrow Account, which is kind of a legacy fund that harkens back to the oil embargo days. So there's a pretty good nexus between the utilization of these particular funds and doing this evaluation of the oil infrastructure in the state.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
So my question is as follows. In the budget change proposal, there's a category, special items of expense, and it's $1.8 million. I want to know what that's for and how you arrived at why that is the appropriate figure.
Oh, I see. This particular proposal came in at our research division, and they basically scoped the work that was going to be needed for this particular proposal. And so it's basically based on experience in comparison with the other studies that were done. So it was kind of looking at the task at hand and having the experience of the division come up with what seemed to be a scope of work. The BCP has a pretty a fair detail associated with it, and we could provide more if you would like.
And these would be consulting contracts?
It would be we would go out to an RFP.
Okay.
And basically do a solicitation for the expertise to do this assessment. That's our vision.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Move the item.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Obernolte has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that this proposal was approved in this subcommittee last year, but rejected in the conference committee due to concerns in the Senate that we needed to give more clear direction through legislation on periodic climate change assessments. And to my knowledge, it has not happened yet. Well, can you speak to that?